I love this show so much. Um,
I did
I
too.
it's sort of like if you can make me think or make me not think, but if you can really bring home the drama with like a plate of soup being walked into a room and I'm just like, what's
Right.
gonna happen? Then this is a show for me. So thank you for taking the time to speak with me.
Oh, my
Um,
pleasure.
I rewatched your episodes this week, and you get some really fun stuff in here.
Yeah.
And I think the first question that I had for you was I didn't realize at the time that you really get to chart the relationship between Larry and Mrs. Blaine. First of all, um, I Laura Benanti could be doing like a paper plate commercial and
Right.
I will watch it.
Exactly.
Um, and I guess I wanted to know maybe like what you guys discussed in terms of circumstances of the age difference between them and how that maybe like plays into the time period.
hmm
I think it's really cool that we get to see you direct their flirtation, their first kiss, their dalliance, I will say, to
Yes.
be and really the sort of breakup between them. So I feel like you're really in charge of that
Right.
relationship. Tell me what you liked about that.
Well, it was interesting because Laura, well, and Terry and I, the three of us talked a lot about it. And it was important to Laura and I, especially that she not be like this cougar who was
Yeah.
a predator and going after this young man. And we really thought a lot about how, when she was married, she was the same age that Larry is now. And she
Mhm.
entered in our imaginations, into this trap, into this cage, into this really repressed environment, perhaps
Mhm.
abusive environment. And that, coming out of that, um, she's really emotionally the same age as Larry. Like her whole life stopped when she entered this marriage with this older
Mhm.
man. And so for Larry to come into her life and like metaphorically open the blinds, right? Let in the light,
Yeah.
let in the life, let in the youth that she lost. And so, emotionally, it felt like she was at the age that she was when all those curtains closed and her life was just repressed and shut down. So
Yeah.
for us, it wanting to feel like, no, it's not this older woman, it's actually this young woman whose heart
Mhm.
is actually the youthful age that Larry's is. And so that's the connection that is happening is between these young people is how we really thought about it. Even though she is an older woman,
Mhm.
her emotional age is the same as Larry's, is how we were playing it.
Yeah, there's like a real genuine I saw it especially in the first couple scenes, like a real tentative shyness from her. And
Mhm.
she really I felt like that really falls away with his like genuine enthusiasm for her. And it's
Yeah,
sort of very disarming for her.
yeah.
So I mean, like, if there was if I mean, I don't think Laura Benanti and I are that far in age, but I think, like, if a good-looking younger man, I would be like, oh, hi. Of course, I would
Yeah,
probably be the exact same way. So it's very relatable.
exactly. Yeah.
Um,
And we wanted it also to be heartbreaking that they couldn't. We wanted it to be
yeah,
that we're really in love and that the circumstances of that society, and of Bertha's, um, desire for her children to live a certain lifestyle, that was important to us that the audience just be rooting for them and then
yeah.
as devastated as they are that Bertha intervenes and ends this love affair.
I feel like, I mean, these two episodes are really interesting too, especially with Bertha is really experiencing feeling out of control in her own home.
Mhm.
And I feel like the scene where she has with Mrs. Blaine, where she really cuts her down, I love how that is really simply blocked. Like for most of the scene, they're both sitting.
Mhm.
And I think I love how the I don't know, their posture in that scene really stuck out to me about how maybe Mrs. Blaine is, she sits in a very proper, rigid way, but I can feel almost like the seat vibrating of her being like, "Oh my God, this it's happening." It's
Yeah.
like my worst sort of fear with this relationship.
Yeah.
Um, I want to go back to episode 2 a little bit, just because this might be me reading completely way much into something. So I was thinking about the scene where Oscar is coming into the Russell home to speak to George. And for some reason, I was really drawn into how, like, maybe high up the camera is and how the camera swirls around. Like, it made me think of this man is in over his head way more than he thinks he is, as
Right.
prepared as he thinks he is. He really is being sort of entering himself into the lion's den. I guess I just wanted to know maybe if you could tell me a little bit about that shot, or maybe I am just
No,
way too in it.
absolutely. I love transitions, right? I
Oh yeah.
love to tell stories with transitions, and certainly on this show, we have such big toys that I can really
Oh
play.
yeah.
Like we have a 35-foot crane on every day. If I want a
Uh,
50, I just have to ask for it, right? So, I can plan a shot like that, that for me, it's really what you're saying, right? It's like he's going in and we're high above it. It's like
yeah.
we're hopes, and then he sits down across from George and we're like brought back down
Hmm.
to reality, right? And so that was really a fun shot to play with and to plan out and create. And you have a few takes because getting him out of that carriage and up under and have
Yeah.
the rotation of the camera so that I can cut into the rotation of the camera inside. And yeah,
So
it was a
fun.
really fun thing to plan. And it was for me, all these fun shots that I get to do on this show, partly because our audience wants to see the full length of the gown and wants to see the whole
Oh yeah.
space. So we get to really travel in a large scale that you wouldn't necessarily get to do on television, right? You oftentimes cut into those close-ups right away and live there. But this opportunity we have because of the scope of the world to take that much space up with a camera move, it's just really fun to play, but also for me, it in designing the shots, you're really thinking about what story are you telling visually. It's not
Mm.
just to make a cool shot, but it's really to help the emotional impact of each of these, beats that occur. So there was a lot of thought for me, exactly as you articulated it about, what Oscar's going through and what he's stepping into, the hope he brings in and the
Yeah.
crash that occurs, once he
Yeah.
arrives.
It's sort of funny, like the when I rewatched it, the first cut to Morgan just sitting in the chair, it made me laugh, and I was like, "Oh, you poor bastard!" And
Right.
he's just very casual, just like, like just like looking at him. Sort of speaking about setting up shots. I wanted to ask about some of the use of mirrors in episode 2. I think the first time I saw it was when Agnes is speaking to Armstrong and
Yeah.
Christine is at her vanity and she's seeing Armstrong in the mirror basically being like, "Stop being so cruel to people, or I'll fire you." And then for some reason, I don't know, it just stuck out to me that I think later in the same episode, we see Armstrong's reflection again in the mirror when it's about Peggy helping her with sewing, and
Right.
it's a
And you see her
smaller
in the
mirror.
mirror at the
Yeah,
sewing. Yeah,
and I don't know if it's just me being like, "Hey, Armstrong, look at yourself. You're being kind of
exactly.
a crazy racist, horrible person." And I guess if that is something that I'm reading far too much into again, or if you could just tell me a little bit about that.
No, absolutely, it's planned. I love
Okay.
mirrors. I love reflections. I love the idea behind looking at ourselves or
Hmm.
avoiding the truth of what's reflected to us. There's also just the elegance of getting to shoot in mirrors where like I get to see Peggy and her reaction at the same time as Armstrong in that moment. I get to see
Yeah.
both of them. And as you said, they added a more important element of look at yourself.
Hmm.
look at yourself in this moment. It's a very powerful for me image, right? That,
Hmm.
someone like you who's looking at this, material, from a critical eye and analyzing it will notice that an audience isn't going to think about it that way, but they are going to have the emotional resonance of those choices, I believe, when
Hmm.
you're able to. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's just a pretty shot, but when you're at least trying to um design a shot that has that kind of resonance, you hope it
Hmm.
lands the way it landed with you. So I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, of course. There's something I was a theater kid, so I feel like there's something about whoever is like seated closest to the mirror. It's just like you're the one who's looking at something else. So it made me think about like why is this person talking to you in a mirror? So I thought that was a really cool sort of parallel between those two
Yeah.
scenes with the same character.
Yeah.
Um, so I did want to ask about the Newport tennis match. First of
Uh-huh.
all, my God, that is a huge, 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 huge. I was just like, all right, Gilded Age challengers moment where Marion is like trying to get away from one man and another man is helping her. I guess I just wanted to, I guess in a general sense, um, the bigness of a scene like that with I mean, there's a million actors and we get to see, I had forgotten that we get to see so much of the sort of not background of the seating area, but we travel through a lot of different spaces there.
Yeah.
And I guess just in terms of scale and scope, that really shows the grandness of what the Gilded Age can do, I guess. What did you like about that?
Well, it was funny because when our location manager Laurie and our production designer Bob brought me to the tennis casino, because it's actually the space where that match was originally played.
Oh
It's the
wow,
real
really?
thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
And I remember when I walked in the space, I was like, oh, I have to like play this in the round. Like this is a 360 space and I
Hmm.
wanted to use all of it. And so the moment I stepped in, my mind was already designing like, oh,
Hmm.
how I'm gonna do this. Also, the really fun thing as a director on one of Julian's shows is he writes the dialogue. He doesn't write the stage direction. So I essentially had
Oh, okay.
10 pages of dialogue for this scene, right? Like it was epic
Hmm.
and it didn't break it out into pieces, right?
Okay.
You could receive this information and have essentially a crowd of people gathered around and just go, you know,
Hmm.
but from in my mind, I was like, oh, this is one of those handoff. We can play this
Hmm.
like you hand these scenes off, and I get to move that way through the space. And so for me, I ended up in my, breakdown in my script, I divided it into, I think, 12 scenes, and I had
Oh
them,
wow. Okay.
hand essentially I placed each scene in the space where I could hand off easily to the next, little mini
Mm.
scene. But it was written as one long scene, that whole tennis casino, right? Both the day and the night
Oh,
scenes.
okay.
So it was really like I got to have so much fun creating like how that was going to play.
Yeah.
Um,
It moves
yes.
really. It's sort of like da da da. Then we go over here.
Yeah.
Then we go over here. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Okay.
It was really fun and creative and a challenge, of course. We shot it over 2 days.
Hmm.
So, you have to be very smart with your AD. I had an amazing AD, amazing DP, and Murphy, my AD, and Manuel, my DP. We really were able to say, okay, we had to organize it so down to the, minutest detail, right?
Hmm.
And even the
Hmm.
background, so like that opening shot with the tennis ball coming up,
Ah, that was so cool.
the tennis ball is CGI'd, and the background,
Okay.
we had 100 background to work with. So we had this really cool, dolly camera setup where we could program the move. So essentially, we had that
Oh.
first, serve that happens.
Hmm.
And then the ball gets hit back, and then he dives for the ball, and then we pan around. So we did that first move of the
Hmm.
serve, the return, and the dive, all were done without a ball. And
Okay.
when we had it the way we wanted it, We said, that's the one. And we repeated that move on our camera
Ah.
and we moved our background. So we found that move, we loved
Hmm.
it. And then it would go, from that move, we went across our background and up and found Marion and
Mm.
Baines and our bad
That's
guy, our,
oh.
our crazy guy whose name I'm forgetting right now. Um, so we had that move and we would repeat that move and we'd take our background. It's
Hmm.
called tiling and you move them over and then you move them over. And so we tiled it. I think we did 8 or 9 passes of just
Oh,
moving our
wow.
background. So you wouldn't have your tennis players on the court then on that move. You
Yeah.
just had that first play
Okay.
that we did. And then, he had his racket and the racket had to land exactly in front of camera the way we wanted it. And then we
Hmm.
put the ball in, um, CGI tennis ball, because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to get that shot the way you wanted
Oh my
it.
God.
Yeah.
I had
So
no
that's
idea. That
the
was
inside
so
scoop
cool.
on that.
Ah, I love that.
I'm
Okay.
just giving it away.
Sorry. Exclusive. Exclusive tennis exposure.
That's it. You
Yeah.
got it.
On sort of a more intimate note, in episode 4, I sort of love I mean, the Gilded Age has a lot of really restrained, high stakes drama, but I love when a lot of really fun flourishes of comedy come through.
Mm.
Um, and I'm thinking specifically of in episode 4 when Agnes, Ada, and Marion are at the table, and Marion and Ada are communicating silently to each other. And there's the whole thing with the bee and the flowers, which I thought
Right.
was really funny. But then it made me really sad when thinking of at that dinner table, we see it twice basically in a span of 10, 15 minutes where it's brighter, it's a little bit of comedic flourishes, but then later at the end of the episode, we see Agnes alone by herself. And I think maybe for some audiences, for a stern character like Agnes Van Ryn, it's like, oh, I feel bad for her.
Yeah.
And I guess I just wanted to know about like making the comedy as restrained as the drama because it makes me like laugh but almost be like, oh, I'm so sorry in a sort of way, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And I think what you said, like that last scene of Agnes at the table is so heartbreaking, right?
It's
It's
so
just
sad.
like, oh,
Yeah.
so sad. Yeah. I think that, you're setting that so sad up in a way. And so what you say about, oh, it's funny, but it's not fun. Like the layers, which is what I love about Julian's writing in general, is these women with such complex personalities and
Hmm.
storylines. And um, I think that setting up that scene with the comedy lets us feel even more when we get to the heartbreak, right? And I
Hmm.
think, for a scene like that, you just, as a director, with those actors,
Hmm.
like, well, Louise is the perfect straight man, right? But, well,
Right.
or Ada is, I'm not sure, but you put Cynthia and you put Christine, and like you just sit back as a director and watch them do their thing. They're
Hmm.
amazing, right? And
Yeah.
their understanding of comedic timing within a drama is just, I mean, it's exquisite. So I can't claim any credit for that scene because it's just like me watching them do their thing. It was
it's
amazing.
it's sort of insane like the amount of the actors that are in this. Like I had the pleasure of going to like an event in New York for season 1,
Mm,
and it was the first time that I had ever done. It was at this gorgeous old hotel. It was like right after COVID restrictions really loosened up a little bit, so everybody's in masks and stuff. And to sort of be in the presence of these, it's the first time I've ever done interviews in person like that. Like Christine Baranski was like this close to my face. And it
uh,
was sort of just like I can't imagine what it would be like for a director, all of these, performers who can really dig into great material.
yeah,
And I imagine, like if you said, can you just make a slight change on this line? They'd be like, okay, and just give you like 10 different
yeah.
options of
Yeah. No,
that's
they're
awesome.
amazing. It's really like what an ensemble. You can't believe it really. And I came to New York when I was 18 to be an actor, and so I
Hmm.
got the theater and see I mean, there's so many actors here that I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I'm in the room with these
Yeah.
giants, right? Giants of the theater. So
Yeah.
it's extraordinary.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. I think these two episodes are so great. I rewatched the whole season again, and I was just like, I love season one, but I feel like season
Yeah.
two is like even, I think season two is even better. So,
Yeah.
I'm really rooting for the show. I think it's criminal that the first season was not just like nominated across the board.
For everything, right?
Criminal, yes. Oh my God. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank
A
you.
pleasure to
And
speak to you
yeah,
and meet you.
I will say I just watched all of season two again because we're starting season three,
Hmm.
and it just I sob through the whole thing. I'm such a sucker for
Yeah.
this show, right? I'm so moved by it, even though I know what's gonna happen.
Hmm.
There's something about these performances and this story that, yeah, I just love it so much. So thank you for,
Yeah. Yeah, they
inviting
don't,
me to talk about it
of
again.
course. Yeah, they don't give you the great thing about it is like they don't give you everything. Like the performers will be doing a scene, but I was like, but what's the subtext? Like there's
Exactly,
so,
right?
oh my God.
So
So
deep. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you again, and good luck to you
Thank
this season,
you.
and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Joe. You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.